Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This event is brought to you by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Safe and Supportive Schools and its Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools Technical Assistance Center. If you're an old friend, you know us as the REMS TA Center. We are very excited to focus today on the role of principals in supporting school safety efforts and in developing and maintaining high quality emergency operations plans. My name is Janelle Hughes, and I'll serve as the moderator for today's event. And I serve as the project director here at the REMS TA Center. As with all of our webinars, we do want to share a few tips with you for engaging with the platform and with us throughout the event. There is no dial-in for this webinar. You can access your audio through your computer speakers. If you're having any technical difficulties with accessing the platform, you can email us at info@remstacenter.org or send us a chat. If you need to access closed captions, you can select the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. We will be sharing a few resources with you at the end of today's event, and we do encourage you to download them and share them with your colleagues and network. And we will also be sharing a webinar evaluation link with you. And we do ask you to just take a brief moment to complete that evaluation so that we can make sure that we're doing everything that we can to enhance the level of service that we're providing the field. We will host a Q&A session after today's panel discussion with our panelists. So we encourage you to post any questions using the Q&A box, and we will answer as many of those as possible today. And you can always feel free to email info@remstacenter.org if you have any questions that come up after the live event. And we are recording today's webinar, and we'll be making a copy of that available on the REMS TA Center's webinars page within a week following today's event. We are so excited to have a full panel of guests today, all principals serving in different schools and school districts throughout our state. We're grateful to have Ty Thompson, former principal at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, Kathleen Gombos, principal at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Michael Sedlak, unit principal at Hudson High School, and Elizabeth Brown, principal at Ocala Charter High School. We'll take some time in a few to formally introduce you to each of them. I do want to take a moment now just to share our agenda for today's event. So we'll start with a brief overview of the importance of engaging in collaborative planning to support school EOP development. We'll then go into our panel discussion, and we hope that you're ready because we have truly a great group of principals here with us today, and they have a wealth of knowledge to share. Again, after our panel discussion, we will open the line and we'll have some Q&A that we'll respond to. And then at the end, we'll share some key resources to support your work. So before we get started with an overview of the importance of collaborative planning, we do want to engage you in a poll question. Let us know whether you've ever heard of the REMS TA Center before today's session, and if so, in what context. You may have attended a live training or a virtual training, requested technical assistance, downloaded a resource. We've met many of you at national conferences as well, and state conferences. And if we've engaged with you in other ways, just send us a quick note via the Q&A, and we love to see how. And it looks like so far, many of you have attended our virtual trainings, such as a webinar like this, or our virtual trainings by request. And many of you have also downloaded resources. We really appreciate each of you joining us for today's event. And if this is your first time meeting us, welcome. We can close the poll now, Dave. Again, the REMS TA Center, we are here to support schools and school districts, institutions of higher education, and their community partners with building their emergency preparedness capacity. And that includes prevention, protection, mitigation, and response, and recovery. Our staff, we are always available via email or phone to respond to your requests for technical assistance on anything related to emergency operations plan development. All right. So let's get into the crux of today's conversation, collaborative planning and school EOP development. And we know that families And whole school communities expect schools and school districts to keep our children and youth safe from hazards and threats, including crime and violence, as well as hazards like natural disasters, disease outbreaks, hazardous material spills, and a variety of other types of threats and hazards. And in collaboration with their community partners, schools and school districts can plan for those potential threats and hazards through the creation of an emergency operations plan, or as we like to call it, an EOP. The school EOP describes how people, not just students, but also teachers, administrators, staff, and visitors, will be protected on and off campus. It also details who is responsible for carrying out specific actions before, during, and after an emergency. It identifies the personnel, equipment, facility supplies, and other resources available, and also outlines how all actions required will be coordinated. And while some EOPs really vary in their content, of course, from state to state, district to district, and they should be customized according to the school building, they generally contain three main sections. The basic plan, as we like to call it, which provides an overview of the schools or the school district's approach to emergency operations, such as training efforts, exercises, information collection, memoranda of understanding, etc. And then the functional annexes section presents how the school will manage common essential functions that may be relevant to a variety of threats and hazards, including evacuation, communications and warning, accounting for all people, family reunification, etc. And then the threat and hazard specific section identifies those protocols that schools will follow to address those specific emergencies, such as active shooter situations, hurricanes, wildfires, power outages, and more. We recommend that schools be developed by school level emergency planning and response teams with membership from their district's core planning team, as well as ad hoc members of the team. So those community partners that support schools. The formation of this multidisciplinary planning team is step one of the six-step planning process that is outlined within the guide for developing high-quality school EOPs, also known as the school guide, and the role of districts in developing high-quality school EOPs, known as the district guide. And these guides may be used by core planning teams to create new plans, as well as to revise and update existing plans. And that last part is so important because EOPs really do need to be living and breathing documents that aren't just developed and sit on a shelf. They need to be practiced and continually updated and enhanced based on lessons learned from incidents, lessons learned from emergencies that not only happen within one school or one school district, but incidents that happen throughout our country. And why collaborate? It's really because the planning and development of a school EOP requires the expertise of a diverse group of people so that it reflects the diverse needs of the school community. And everyone has expertise to contribute. Transportation directors, school facility managers, IT specialists, nurses, community engagement specialists, mental health professionals, and of course, school administrators and principals, which is why we're here today. And there are various roles that school principals will play before, during, and after an emergency. And we'll hear from our panelists in a moment about, some of the ways that they have been involved and continue to be involved in those before, during, and after aspects of planning. But just to quickly provide an overview of some of those areas of support that are really specific to principals before an event, it's supporting, again, EOP development and playing a lead role on that multidisciplinary planning team. Serving as the model school safety leader. Many people are looking to the principal as a model of school climate, but also as the model in terms of the emergency preparedness culture. Cultivating relationships with community partners and serving as a liaison between the school, the district, and in some cases, the state education agency. During an event, they're really serving in that role of incident commander. So they are communicating with first responders, staff, in some cases, families and caregivers, and others who are playing a role in that response phase. They're also supporting the public information officer or the PIO and the response team with communications and warning. And in many cases, leading those specific response actions that are outlined in those functional annexes and activating those functional annexes. And then after an emergency, there's so much work to do, and the school principal is going to play a key role in that, in leading and participating in after action reviews and reports. So again, an incident has taken place. Now you must take time to think about what happened, what could have been improved, what worked well, documenting all of that in the after action review and coinciding report. Also directing faculty and staff on changes to protocols based on those lessons learned that were walked through during that after action. And then managing the various phases of recovery, so short-term, immediate, and long-term, in collaboration with community partners. So again, as you can see, this is just a quick idea of some of the roles that a school principal will play. And in one moment, we'll talk a little bit more about other roles that they play in supporting not only EOP development, but response and recovery. So we're going to take another moment now to engage with you on another poll question. We want to know about your role in school safety, security, emergency management, and preparedness. Are you supporting EOP development, incident response, training and exercises, recovery, or other? And some of you may be supporting all of these categories. And I'm seeing now the responses coming in that most of you here are supporting EOP development. So you're definitely in the right place. And we've got the right people here for you to learn from. And I see that a good majority of you, just about 20%, are also supporting incident response, 15% training and exercises, and just 1% recovery. So I know we'll be talking a little bit about recovery today as well. So get ready. Again, we have a great group with us today. Think about questions that you'd like to pose to them during the event, and we'll be sure to answer as many as possible during our panel discussion that we're going to move into now. All right. As I mentioned before, we're really excited to have the panelists that we have here with us today, and I'm going to turn it over now to each of them to introduce and share a little bit about themselves, starting with you, Ty. Over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Ty Thompson, a former principal at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Our incident happened on February 14th of 2018, so we're coming up on our 6-year commemoration time. I currently do serve at the district level. I was with athletics for a few years. Now I'm working in the IT division, but I do have some overarching themes here that continue on, even though I'm not in the school building at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, including my work with the Principal Recovery Network with the NASSP.
Thank you, Ty. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Gumbos now.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for being here because this is really, really an important topic. My name is Kathy Gumbos, and I am the current principal at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I was a principal of another elementary school prior to the tragedy in 2012, and I took over immediately after the tragedy because the principal had passed away in the school shooting. Again, I just want to thank you all for taking the time to learn and understand your commitment to our role in this building of safety plans. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Michael, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Sedlak. I'm currently a unit principal at Hudson High School in Hudson, Ohio. Part of my time and 20 years of education was being assistant principal at Chardon High School during the shooting in 2012 as well, February 27th. So we're coming up on our 12th year after that. In that situation, we had 6 students shot, 3 of which were murdered. One's currently in a wheelchair for life. So again, the importance of this meeting and your roles and what you can do before, during, and after a tragedy is vital, and it doesn't change. So just keep, my focus has been to just keep moving forward and support my local community and anyone else I can as well through NASSP and the Principals Recovery Network in any way I can. So thank you for having us this morning.
Thank you, Michael. Elizabeth, over to you.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Brown. I'm currently the principal at Ocala Charter High School in Ocala, Florida. Previous to this assignment, I was the principal at Forest High School, also in Ocala, Florida. I took over the school as school leader less than a month after a school shooting event. The school shooting was April 20th of 2018, right at 2 months after Marjory Stoneman Douglas. And our location is about 4 hours north of Parkland. So in that moment, my expertise with recovery is basically rebuilding the school culture. And that's mostly what I will speak to today here in the recovery piece, because again, I took over after the shooting and then led the school through the recovery process. So thank you for being here. And I look forward to sharing some of our thoughts and things that we've learned.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you to each of you for all that you do to support school safety in your localities. So let's dive into our panel presentation with the first question. What are principals' top concerns before, during, and after an emergency? And then how is that reflected in the emergency operations plan?
So I think all of us out there, they said there's about 800 maybe listening to us today. The whole point of before, during, and after is to keep the students safe, to keep the staff safe, and to keep the visitors safe. How that is reflected in the emergency operation plan, you need to know and understand what the potential threats for your area are, whether it's natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. And those need to be reflected in your emergency operation plan, whether it's going through scenarios, playing the what if game on what if this happens, what if that happens, and kind of, yes, it's sometimes going down a rabbit hole, but really going through and having those tough discussions and conversations, and knowing that whatever you have in place will probably change because every situation's different. So no matter how many different avenues you think of and brainstorm for and plan for, there'll always be something different. So making sure that you're comfortable knowing that the plan you have in place might not be the plan that's carried out. But our school resource officers always say, your body won't do what your mind hasn't already gone to. So if you're not thinking about doing some of these things, then you won't be able to do them in the event of a tragic event.
Absolutely. And I would like to add to that, when you put together what you believe that you will do before, during, and after, at times it's a document on a piece of paper. It takes out the human factor. And so understanding that while you practice and you discuss and you troubleshoot and you go through the process of making sure that your EOP is absolutely fail-safe, in the moments after, in the days and months after any type of crisis event like this, especially if there is a loss of life, make sure that as a school leader, you are keeping that human factor first and foremost in your mind. As we were kind of talking through this, the four of us before, and that question was one that we were discussing, we all kind of said the same thing. What is your priority? What is your role? And that is taking care of the people in the building, whether they were there before, they're there during, and they're there after. And one of those people is you. So as a school leader, often before, during, and after these type of events, you're busy and you're working and you're having conversations. And I know that all of our principals that were actually on campus on the day of a crisis have all really promoted that moment of reflection and that time to take care of yourself as well. So as you're taking care of everybody else, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and remember that steps on a piece of paper also have the human factor, and make sure that that human factor is first and foremost in your mind.
I just want to add that, even a threat or sometimes even a safety drill can impact people differently. So it's really important that as the leader of the school, you have to be everything to everybody. And we know that, right? So we didn't go to school to do safety and security. Many of us who have been principals for 20 plus years didn't even have a class in it. But one of the things that I've learned from being at Sandy Hook for the last decade is that you have to hold your people. You have to hold your kids and your parents and your staff after any situation. And people are individuals, so you have to meet them kind of where they are. But it is important. The one thing that I've realized over the years is it's communication, communication, communication. Anything time you can get, even during an event, if it is a threat and you have any possibility to get to your parents to say, listen, here's what's going on campus. It's important they hear your voice. I often, if we have a swatting situation and we can determine that it is swatting quickly, I often will say to my secretary, send an email saying that, this is me and I'm going to get back to you in a few minutes or a little while. Just let me handle what's going on. But I have the ability to contact you because we're really okay right now. And I think that's very important that we do hold our community. It is number one, keeping them safe, though that is our priority. So, and then to Elizabeth's point, you have to debrief, add, many of our emergency plans don't have that after because you haven't done it. So when something happens, even if it's not a true emergency, it's really important that you add that piece to your plan, add the email you sent, add the notes about what you didn't think went right or how you're going to change it. That's a really important piece, especially after, because there's no learning that comes out of a drill like the learning that comes out of an actual situation. And unfortunately, it can consume you. Even just a simple call to a police department can consume you for days, but it's really important that we do our due diligence in correcting what was wrong or being reflective, because unfortunately, no two situations are the same.
Thank each of you. And I think that's the perfect segue into my next question. You mentioned no two situations are the same. As we talked about before, during an emergency, the principal is falling into that incident commander role. And, that might be in response to an active shooter situation or a power outage or a hazardous materials spill. But can you talk a little bit about how the principal actually serves in that incident commander role during an emergency, regardless of the emergency threat or type?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're the leader of your school as a principal, so you already get the title of incident commander, whether you wanted it or not. So you're kind of there in charge. And there are some situations where the police show up and the fire department shows up, and then they kind of take over a situation. But don't fool yourself. You are still the kind of person in charge at that school level, because when the police and fire have questions, who are they going to be asking? They're going to be asking you, because either you know the facility, the faculty, the different buildings and things like that. So you ultimately are really the incident commander from start to finish. And so, there are many things just to kind of keep in mind. I always try to say, try to stay calm. It's so easy to say, but try to stay calm and use some common sense. As Elizabeth had said, the human factor, you just got to know that sometimes as police and fire come in and they think they want you to do this or they think they should do that. And sometimes you have to be the human feel on that to be like, I don't know if that's quite a good idea. We're talking about 13 to 17-year-olds in this building. So there's things like that where you can have an influence on the decision makers at a particular situation that takes place. So just kind of, you want to always keep that in mind. And then, of course, when there's incidents in the community, there's, you have a lockdowns, these kinds of things are happening around you. Obviously, you're going to be the one kind of in charge of that scenario at your school, but you are getting obviously advice from the authorities, because they're the ones that have probably called you to tell you to put you in a particular situation. So it's just important just to know that the authorities are going to be by your side in the event that they do take over an incident, because they're still going to need your expertise. And when the incident is over, and everyone's kind of alluded to this already, when the incident is over, you are for sure going to be the commander in the post-op, because those people are going to be gone, and you're going to be there like, okay, now I need to debrief with my staff. I need to find out what worked, what didn't work. So as we've said, and you're going to hear this throughout a lot of these questions, how we're going to manipulate these EOPs to make sure that we don't have that same type of scenario kind of moving into whatever the next incident may be, whether it's a bomb threat or an evacuation or even a fire drill that didn't quite go right. So.
In Connecticut, all our ERT teams, which is our emergency response teams, I know everybody has a different acronym based on where they are, but all our have to take the ECS course on incident command. So we have and we can put that link somewhere, but it's a course on how incident command is transferred. And I believe it's a national course, but we have to take it. So my ERT takes it every year. And I think to Ty's point, the most important piece is obviously if there's a crisis situation, the police, fire come in and they assume incident command, but you're not off the hook because you are the person who is informing them of situations, of the building grounds, of certain people that might be in your building that this may impact differently. And so it's really important that you partner with them, but that partnership really starts prior to an incident. So if you're in districts or working the relationship, I mean, we're very fortunate in Newtown because since the tragedy, we've done lots of training and I have a very close relationship with the Newtown Police Department that, every chief is on my cell phone. But in any community, you have to bring your local authorities into your buildings to partner with you on this because they will take incident command. And some of them, if they don't understand what your role is, so tabletop exercises in district or tabletop exercises between you and the police, it's really important that they understand that you have information because sometimes you'll get a police officer that doesn't see the value in your role necessarily. And you have to be secure enough to say, I would never, ever question a police officer's stance on something or authority on something. But it is, to Ty's point, if you can say yes, but can just hear this, because some of them have never had any experience with schools or school campuses. So that's important. And any of that work you can do prior to, if you can recommend your district does tabletops with your local police departments, it's really an important thing. And it develops relationships between you and those people in a setting that isn't so intense and critical.
Thank you both. And so I think we heard a few themes here, but the main is that although you're the incident commander during the event, it's also firming up that role before an event and also after an event. The onus is on you. But also, that you really are serving as the voice of the school community. As you mentioned, there might be some cases where you have to advocate for a student or a staff member or for a process to ensure kind of alignment with the protocols and courses of action already outlined in your EOP. And I think this is, again, a perfect segue into our next question, which is really trying to get each of you to describe, or some of you to describe a situation that really reinforce the importance of principals playing a role in those before, during, and after aspects, and the actual development and revision of school EOPs.
Sure. So I think I'm going to take the lead on this one. But so unfortunately, because of our notoriety with the name Sandy Hook and being our school, we've had quite a few swatting incidents over the years. And each is taken seriously as the next one and the first one and the last one. We never assume that they're swatting until they are, proved to us that that is the case. So when we talk about the reinforcement, recently I had a situation where police had to come to the building. And like many of you, we have tiers in our safety books, right? So our first one is our first one is safe school mode, which I don't know, everybody calls them something different, but basically that means we go about our business and we're inside, right? So the campus is closed, but kids and teachers would have nothing else. ERT team secures doors and gets kids in. And then our next level is shelter in place. And that means kids are, again, they're not locked down, they're not in bathrooms, they're not in lockdown mode, but they are in their classrooms or in wherever they were working, but they don't leave unattended. And that just gives us control over the building. And in this case, the director, we worked with each other, but what happened was we went into safe school mode under the direction of myself and the director of security. And I think when we debriefed afterwards, because the minute the police got here, we went into shelter in place. So we debriefed afterwards and realized that from now on, our district default is if the police are on the way, the kids are in shelter in place. And then this way we have control. It certainly does not traumatize anybody, but it gives us control, because when the police arrived, we had kids passing. And whether it's swatting or they knew it was real or we knew, it doesn't matter. So that is a perfect example of changing what we do after an incident. And I think it was the debrief with the police department and myself. Another thing that we changed after this incident was the incident commander was the police, detective when he arrived, and I knew that. And then he and I spent the next hour or so being incident commanders together. And then in our debrief, we realized that we were on the move. And so next time we would make sure the incident command stayed in one space, right? So those are the kind of things. And even if you don't, hopefully you won't ever have a situation, but even if you don't have a situation, I cannot express the importance of debriefing after drills. I can't, because if you don't take drills seriously and you don't show your staff that you want feedback and debrief, they're never going to take it seriously. And as much as we don't think something's going to happen and we get used to fire drills and we have to do them by law monthly, it's really important you take 10 minutes with your ERT team. I often send Google Forms to my teachers and say, it's between me and them. I don't do a Google Doc. I do a Google form, and I say what went wrong, what went right, what do you need help with, etc. And then we absolutely use all of that feedback in debriefing and revising our plans.
And I think that's like Cassie's saying, is I always try to equate the debrief and everything almost to like the NTSB when they go and they look at air safety. No one wants a plane to crash. No one wants a shooting. No one wants a bomb threat at their school. But you take those experiences and you see what took place and then you correct it. I mean, the best way, like I said, the NTSB is the best thing to look at. Because this took place, then these corrections are put in place for the safety of all and air safety. It's the same exact scenario that we're dealing with here at a school. You get that debrief, you get that information, you find out what worked, what didn't work, and then you adjust the EOP. An example that I have from the district level is a couple of years ago, we had something called COVID. And Florida always does their graduations indoors because of the heat in June and the weather in June. But we shifted all of our graduations outside. So that created a whole different type of EOP plan that we had to put together, because not only was the district had never done that before, but the schools had never done that before. Knock on wood, we only had one little bit of rain for 5 minutes out of a whole week. I think the Lord was looking down on us that year. But point being is, as these things change, you have to make adjustments to your plans. And that's just one example with us having to shift to an outdoor venue that we normally don't do for a graduation. So that's just a couple examples of making sure you're on top of developing and revising your EOP on a pretty constant basis.
Yeah, and perception of safety is as important as real safety. Like, so if you're the leader in your school and people do not perceive that you take this seriously and that you debrief and you ask questions and you do all this great stuff, then they're not going to take it seriously. So that's a very important piece.
Thank you for emphasizing that, Kathy. And, we've all talked about, as you just mentioned, Ty, the importance of, kind of looking at the NTSB model and, okay, this happened, we're going to update the EOP based on that. But we also understand that when you practice the EOP with your school safety team and staff, that provides another opportunity to update the EOP. So not just learning lessons from real events, but also your tabletop exercises, your drills, your trainings. So can you talk a little bit about the steps you take to practice the EOP with your team and to keep them updated? And is your approach more focused on practicing those emergency management functions? So again, family reunification, evacuation, lockdown, shelter in place, or are you really practicing response to specific hazards and threats? Can you talk through that a little bit? Elizabeth, I'll turn it over to you for that one.
So our training here in the state of Florida is very much based in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act, which is the act that our legislators passed immediately after the shooting in Parkland. Some of the pieces of it were kind of knee-jerk reactions, and they've gone back and revised those. And our training and how we practice covers both sides of it. At the admin level and at the emergency response team level, we are always talking through scenarios about reunification. What do we do if we have students that, because we go by Alice protocol, if we have students that actually evacuate the building during a crisis, how do we find them? Will law enforcement really be able to contact them, et cetera, and so on? And we're continuously troubleshooting those particular scenarios. But with the staff, And the students, we add to that our practice drills. And one of the things that has been a huge conversation here in the state of Florida is how often and how realistic should our active shooter or active threat drills be. And so I'll just kind of tell you what we do at our level. And because we do follow the Alice protocol, it allows options for what you do. You can barricade and stay in a safe, quiet spot. Or if the threat is not directly in your area, you can safely get off the campus, you can leave campus during that time. So honestly, at the high school level, we don't do the evacuation piece as much because they are taught to run and to run as far as they can, and that law enforcement and school personnel will find them to text back in where they are, et cetera, and so on, get in touch with their parents. We don't practice that very much because high schoolers will just go right over there to McDonald's and not come back during a drill. But we do practice very descriptively the barricading, the hard corners, what we call the hard corners, which means the places that students can hide that are not in eyesight, the staying quiet. And even when I was still the principal at Forest, we practiced scenarios. It was very, very delicate, though. I'm going to be honest. Drills and practice can always, and we've mentioned this, can always trigger a student. Doesn't matter if you've had an event on campus or not. If that student's had an event in their life, it can trigger that event, and you want to be very compassionate and very mindful of that. So I do a lot of talking during our drills. In fact, my students at Forest were, kind of like Miss Brown, you talk all the way through our drill. And I just continuously am keeping them up to date. If we're doing a scenario drill and have to give the information, we have an alleged threat at the back of the campus. This is the description of the person, et cetera, and so on. Once we get into that Alice protocol, I talk them through it. Students, we are clearing the classrooms in this hallway right now. Students, we have law enforcement on campus. It's that communication piece. And we drill just like I would do if it was an actual incident and I was available to talk through what I can talk through according to law enforcement with the students. So our training is very much twofold. It is exactly what you mentioned in your first point, that we go over that reunification process. We look at things other than, active assailant, and then we drill the practices.
I know that what we do is we present our EOPs at our first meeting, and we have staff sign off that they've read the documents. We have some pre-made books, some emergency procedures that they are bound, so we add pieces to them each year. But we put them in writing and we go through them at our first faculty meeting. We also meet with every single substitute before they go into a classroom. We meet with anybody and review the basic procedures and give them a 1-page in case something were to happen. I think that's an important piece for people that's a miss sometimes, that you have new people in your classrooms, and I think it's important that you make sure that even a substitute teacher has a general knowledge of the 3 main things that you may ask your school to do during an emergency. We have practiced reunification as a district with adults, so we've all done that. I've had to reunify a couple of times because we've had to leave campus for threats in the past 10 years, but so we've kind of had an up as far as really seeing how our system works. One of the things I wanted to mention is make sure you include your secretaries, because they are first line on so much of this. They're getting the phone call. And when you're interviewing secretaries, make sure that is a question that you understand that they are the one who is going to maybe be talking to police on the phone, maybe receiving a threat, maybe, it has to be someone who can send messages for you, someone who can be calm in a crisis, because at no time other than, like no other time, they definitely become your right-hand person. So when we talk about staff, we have to make sure, our custodians, we all know they are vital in these situations as well. So we want to make sure we include everybody in our planning and in our presentation of, our EOPs and in our debriefing to reflect and change.
One other thing I found is taking regardless of students, taking the staff to maybe the reunification sites or walking them through, again, without students even, a scenario or, we're actually doing it next week. One of our reunification sites, they had some modifications done to the building. So we're going to go there, show them what it looks like now, where students would go in the case of an event, and things like that. So just taking some of that anxiety away from teachers, making the walk to the other school. It's February in Ohio. It's 50 something today. It could be 28 next week. So we'll probably just drive, but, making sure that they know where they're going and whatever you can do to take some of that anxiety. We've had some good questions in the Q&A that we'll be addressing coming up too.
We also do a drill week that I would highly recommend. We just started it in September. We do every drill. And we let our parents know Monday is fire drill, Tuesday is lockdown drill, Wednesday. And we get it done. And some of them are modified, some are not. We even evacuate one day in September as well.
We do that the first 3 days of school. We do 2 different lockdowns, fire drill, tornado drill.
Thank you both. And I think each of you answering this last question, you talked a little bit about, who are your key partners? So, I heard secretaries, I heard facilities managers, we know that those first responders are also key partners. But I'm really wondering, with whom are you collaborating at the school district and the state education agency level, as well as at the building level, to ensure as seamless as possible of a response?
I'll start this one off. Obviously, you have to work with first responders. You have to work with parents, state security resources. I know Ohio has different resources that will come into your schools and districts and work with the admin or teachers or what have you. First responders should not be in your school for the first time during an event. We've opened our schools up for before the massive summer cleanings and things like that. They'll come in and do trainings in our buildings so that they get practice, they get to know our buildings, and they've been in and know that. So that's been really helpful. We do have a student parent or a staff parent safety committee. Again, a lot of the EOP information is privileged information, so they do have to sign a non-disclosure agreement that they won't discuss what we talk about or issues we bring up with the committee to, outside people outside of the committee. But students has always been brought up. How do we include students in the planning and things like that? As much as we would like to include them more, we can't. There are some limitations with that. We do discuss safety at we have a monthly leadership meeting with our admin team, and it's called our e-board. It's the leaders of our National Honor Society, student government, things like that. And we talk about upcoming events, and if we're seeing a problem from school, we could bring that to them. So we do talk about safety. We talk about opening the doors for people, things like that, and having the open conversation, saying, get out and tell your organizations, you're elected by your peers, so go out and tell them, hey, we're doing this to keep you guys safe. We're not just being jerks. You can't leave out that way just because we want you to walk farther to your car. We want you to go out this door because it's safer, because we can see you, we can track who's going out, and making sure no one's coming in when you leave. So having those open conversations with them has helped, and even getting their input, but not necessarily at the big table with the committee when they're being planned. So obviously they're a part of the drills. Have conversations with the kids. We're kind of monitoring what teachers and students are doing, so having conversations with kids. The kids hopping down the stairs to see how many they can take, and like, hey, this is a drill. You got to take it seriously. Get outside, make sure your teachers take attendance. Again, and that changes based on your grade level that you're currently working with.
Right. And on that note too, Mike, is the fact that, as you already said, you're working with local entities, And at a district level, at least in my case, we have a very large school district. We're like the 6th largest in the nation. So there's a lot of district resources too that come in to make sure that, EOPs and things are ready to go. And we have a strong lobbying group that goes to the state legislature as well, which also helps to be able to try to make sure that we're maybe getting some state funding to help some of these initiatives. My only word of caution to this group is, especially after you have had or an event has happened even in the country, you're going to have a lot of people come from the outside claiming to be experts on what you can do to make sure that your school is not the next school. Be very, very cautious with that. And I'm sure there's many on this call that can allude on that. And I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Just make sure you have a vetting process or your district handles that, because everyone's going to be an expert. And I'm not saying some of them aren't good, but it's very hard to go through the weeds to figure out who actually knows what they're talking about versus just trying to, quite frankly, looking for a money grab to help with the label of school safety expert.
Thank you both. So my next question is, as a principal, and we talked a little bit about this at the top of the conversation, but what role do you play in helping to establish a true culture of safety and emergency preparedness? Are you regularly convening with students, faculty, or staff via formal meetings, open conversations, maybe hosting coffee hour chats or orientations around school safety? And Kathy, I think you talked a little bit about what you're doing within your school. So I'm going to turn it over to you to begin the response to this question.
Sure. So how do you keep it forefront? And again, I think it is about perception as much as it is about reality. So even in your mid-year conversations or your end of the year conversations, there's nothing wrong with asking anyone if they have any safety concerns, or what was their experience during a drill, sending sheets, because again, that is how we keep it alive. We present it, we make people sign off on it. We really try to be really good about our debriefing of our drills. But we do drill week, which parents understand. They're given the definition of every drill, and we're in elementary school, so we walk parents through what the drill is going to look like. For years, we let parents know when we were going to have any drill. We no longer do that. But I do think it's important that, we include everybody. We include the district in on it. We have teams in our schools that meet 3 times a year that include first responders and parents. And that's our largest safety team. So in between, we take notes, we revise things, but we do have teams, and they're mandated in Connecticut that we have a larger, I think it's called an SSC, all our acronyms, but a couple of times a year we meet and first responders are there as well. So I just think it's important that when we talk about keeping it as a forefront, your perception from your staff and your community is that you take it seriously. It is part of your job, and you ask them to take it seriously as well. I know there was a question about what if a staff member doesn't cooperate or doesn't take it seriously. I mean, that's a very big violation, and that is a concern. So to me, that would be almost the most egregious thing you could do, would be not to take the emergency operations manual and read it or to know it. And certainly anyone who refuses to, then you certainly don't belong in our schools.
So I wanted to add, simply because student voice is where I land quite a bit, with the making sure that your safety plan and your safety philosophy and your safety ideas infiltrate your community, your school community, and your staff and your students. One of the biggest pieces that I learned, and I learned it very, very quickly, is that what we as adults in the building feel like students feel unsafe about is not what students feel unsafe about. They see us drilling all the time for active assailant, for threats, things like that. That's not what they feel unsafe about. They feel unsafe about different things. And listening to that student voice, I had actually, through our Student Government Association, put together a safety preparedness committee that actually sat in and helped build our EOP after the shooting incident. And I had 2 of them, and their parent was involved as well, because sometimes those conversations get very deep and can be somewhat troubling. And so the students volunteered. I chose 2. Their parent committed to it as well. But my Student Government Association across the board felt very comfortable coming to me and saying, look, We've had an active shooter on campus. We know that it can happen, but what we really feel like is unsafe is this. Kids driving out of our parking lot like, they're on fire. Or we've had too many fights lately, Miss Brown. We don't feel safe walking through the hallways because kids are not participating in conflict resolution. They're just putting up fists and going at it. So whenever you begin to talk about really making sure that you're building that culture that is surrounding your EOP, don't forget that student voice, because there are things that they deal with and that are in the back of their mind as far as school safety that we don't think about because it's not a natural disaster. It's not an active threat, but there are things that make your students feel unsafe at school, and those need to be addressed.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, and I think I'll address some of the questions too. All these panels on my computer are awesome for my ADHD. So I'm trying to answer questions and answer live. I love it. Open communication. I talked about our staff and parent safety committee. Someone asked about giving too much information. Like I said before, anyone on the committee, they do have to apply. We do look for parents that can add to the committee. So we have mental health professionals. We had a Green Beret at one point who looked at our plan. He's like, wow, this is really good. I'm like, I'll take that as a plus for us. But getting all those different perspectives, but with that non-disclosure, they can't talk about our plans outside of the meeting or with other people. Someone else asked to look at ours. I can't show you ours because, we have to register with the state of Ohio. And I think you can see the table of contents, but you can't see any of the actual plans. Another thing I found that really, we can't become complacent. It's everyone's heightened right when they see a shooting on the news, then it goes away, and then they're heightened again at the next one. We bring it up at every staff meeting, not as a scare tactic, but hey, this is what we're doing, or hey, we're changing this because this is the feedback we got. But we're constantly bringing it up. Another thing I found that really works is, I planned a separate training for our food service staff. And like, what's it going to look like in a cafeteria? We have 1,500 kids in our building. There might be 600 at lunch at one time. If something happens, what does that look like? Police came in and did like a special run high fight for them. Firefighters came in, they got to use they have this like digital fire extinguisher. They got to put out a fire and try that. We fed them lunch at the end. We fed food service lunch, so that was kind of fun. And it was just, they felt really valued and really appreciative of kind of not forgetting about them. We train our subs or new staff members to the building, or ones that are coming in. Someone talked about after hours, working with your AD. We have a community ed director, so we've worked with her to get planning and training for the staff for those events. And we worked with our AD at the high school level. But we also have Science Olympiad and speech and debate and all these other. So just making sure that anyone that's in your building after campus, that they're, it's a part of your culture. You have to keep bringing it up. Another thing we do is, propping doors open is always a big issue. I think in every school I've been at, in every state I've been in, we have a ton of cameras. If a custodian says, hey, at 6:30, that door was locked, and at 7:30 it was propped open, we'll look at the cameras, we'll find the coach, we'll find the teacher, we'll find the student that propped it open, and we'll have a conversation with them. Doesn't always have to be punitive, but just, hey, we're trying to keep kids safe. You prop the door open first thing in the morning, you propped it open during the day after school, and just kind of always keeping that on people's minds.
And I think when we talk about giving too much information, I know there's always a fine line between informing your community of what your plans are and giving too much information. So what I have found has worked here, which obviously, now we're much better, but for years we had a community that was in need of as much communication and information as possible, is that I just am very transparent right in the beginning of the year. That it's not that I'm keeping things from you. It's that, part of keeping kids safe is not putting our emergency plans out there. I also say to parents, you can call me and I can talk through some details with you if you're really concerned. But I put it right out to my community that they wouldn't want our emergency plans out there, and they wouldn't want me to be putting them in emails. Definition of drills is one thing. So I think, and I think we all know this as principals, the more transparent you can be with everything, the less backlash that we do receive. So I do put it right out there that, I will share everything I can. And if I'm not sharing enough for you, then call me and we can talk through it.
Thank you all. This has been such an insightful conversation. And I really appreciate each of you because you've been taking the time to either respond to questions to those individual requesters, or you've been integrating them into our responses. So we will have time to address one additional question that we weren't able to get to. But before we go there, I would like to ask each of you just to provide one or two pieces of advice that you would offer to a new principal who may not have any experience managing school-based emergencies. So I'll turn it to you first, Ty, just really briefly, one or two pieces of advice that you would offer.
My biggest thing is you got to stay calm in the moment because everyone's looking at you. In the aftermath, think of the emergency on the airplane, the oxygen mask comes down. You have to help yourself first before you can help others. And lastly, I would say take an opportunity to read the PRN Guide to Recovery, regardless of a shooting or not. That's going to give you some insight to what to deal with when you have any kind of a situation on your campus. It doesn't have to be a shooting. It's a great resource to be able to read. There's my 2 cents.
So I would say to a new principal coming in, obviously I second what Ty said, as well as look at other resources and don't let it get put on the back burner because there's going to be a lot going on as you take over the building as principal. Make sure that school safety is a priority and find a mentor principal that knows school safety, has worked through things, or reach out to somebody that has had to deal with safety issues on their campus and have those early onset conversations with a mentor about how to go through the process of making sure that your emergency plan is up to date, implemented, trained, and followed through with.
I think I would just add to piggyback off Elizabeth is know your plans, practice your plans, and ask questions. You're in this role because you have common sense. So much of what we do every day is based on our common sense and what we know is right for kids. So I don't, if you haven't had an experience, hopefully you never will. Just never become complacent in it's not going to happen here because you don't want to get caught not have taken it seriously prior to an incident. So the most important thing is take it seriously and model for your community. And if you do that, it doesn't have to be a huge part of your job every day. Because if you do all the stuff up front and you just make it a piece of what you do weekly, it can definitely not be as overwhelming as it seems. And reach out to us, like any of us. Unfortunately, there's hundreds of us have gone through situations now. And I can tell you that anybody in our network, which there's probably about 30 of us in the network, would be more than happy to mentor or coach any new principal on any of this stuff. And because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I'll finish this and then I have some answers to questions in the Q&A. So like Ty said, you got to stay calm. It's going to be difficult, but taking that, even if it's closing your eyes for 2 seconds, taking a deep breath and moving on. And just, I always say, do what you think is best for the students and staff at the time with the information you have at the time to keep everyone safe. Everyone's, I'm a Browns fan. Everyone's a great, Monday morning quarterback. But everything you do is going to be looked at with a microscope. What allowed me to sleep at night, especially right after our event, was knowing that what I did at the time, I did with the best intentions to keep my students safe, my staff safe, get kids home with their parents, and let's try to figure out the next, few years together. So doing that, someone had asked, and I love this question because I had a student like this. asked about a student with anxiety, and I can't find it now. But are we doing a disservice if we're, not including them in the drills? I was a principal at a 4th and 5th grade school, and I had a teacher come up to me, and it was later in the year, and she said, I have a student, a lot of anxiety. It's a nice day. It's the last day. And, March, are we doing a fire drill today? Because he knows. And I go, yeah, we are, And she goes, he gets really anxious. I said, have him come with me. So he came to the office. He saw how we kind of organized a pre-fire drill. He got to meet our fire lieutenant and fire chief. I said, these are the guys that keep us safe. We went over to a pull station. I let him pull the pull station. Said, this is what happens. That's how long it takes. So he got to see start to finish reunification, radioing everyone. I got this student, I'm missing this student, and making sure everyone was accounted for. And now he's at the high school with me, and he doesn't have any problems with it. It's kind of demystifying what they didn't know. So I would say bring them along with you, and if that's something you can do, that could help that student.
We definitely had many kids that had alternate plans for drills. And we did our very best to make sure that nobody was able to opt out, but we've had situations where social workers go through a drill with kids. To Michael's point, I've had kids with me because the drill is for practice. So you really don't want them to, but you also want to help them bridge that gap between the unknown and the known, as Michael said.
Thank you so much to each of you. Again, I honestly could sit on this line and talk to all of you all day. I learned so much from these conversations. I also would like to thank all of our participants. You all posed really great questions. If you ever need any additional support or have additional questions, again, you can always email us at info@remstacenter.org. And we will work with our experts to get you responses to your questions.
Absolutely.
In just a moment, you will see our tech team. It's actually just sent it out, a few resources to support you with your efforts as you move forward. And you think Kathleen and Michael just mentioned, students who may have sensory issues or other neurodivergences that may impact, their participation in drills. The REMS Center, we're getting ready to release in the next couple of weeks a new fact sheet that focuses in on that. But please take a moment to check out all of the resources that you see on your screen that can support you in your role as principals or in your role as support staff. And as always, remember that we are here. We are a resource as well. The REMS Center, we're always an email or a phone call away. If you need any support with technical assistance, or you want to request a live training by request, again, all of the resources that we offer are free to the field. So don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much for attending today's webinar, for submitting great questions, and for engaging with us throughout the event. A special thank you again to Ty, Elizabeth, Michael, and Kathy for your involvement and all of the expertise that you shared today. We hope to see all of you again at another webinar or event in the field. And if you ever have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to give us a call or send us an email. Thank you.
Thank you.